Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. Now, tonight is a continuation of the Legal Ease show of last week, where we had the pleasure of hosting Brother Bilal Abdul Kareem. And you would recall that the topic that was discussed was the war on Islam, the inside story. Now, just by way of reminder, Brother Bilal hails from New York, and he came to Islam approximately 18 years ago, and he's a journalist by training. Part of his journalism job description took him into various territories, including Syria, where he had to cover for a period of almost 2 years various sides to the conflict, and he had to report or was employed by various international news agencies. And it gives me great pleasure once again to introduce to you Brother Bilal. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much for joining us on Legal Ease.
And thanks for having me back.
Well, my recollection of last week's show was extremely interesting and fact-filled. Now, in order for us to understand the war on Islam, the inside story, there's, in my view, no better person than Brother Bilal, who himself has had extensive experience. Brother Bilal, what took you into Syria, a war zone as we know it?
Well, initially I went to Syria because I wanted to produce a documentary. I wanted to highlight the struggle that the Syrian people were going through, the difficulties, the killings, and such like that. Of course, this was a time when they had the so-called Arab Spring. So I initially went there just to film a documentary and then basically to leave. When I got there, I found much more than what I initially thought that I would have. I was initially with some of the Syrian rebels, but then after that I started to get to know some of the foreign fighters, and I was really enamored because I wanted to see what made these foreign fighters, basically what made them tick, what was interesting for them. I'm sorry, enough.
We seem to have a lot of interference with this line. I hope it's not too disturbing.
No, it's
you can
okay.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead. Sorry to have interrupted. So you came in contact with foreign fighters.
Right. I came in contact with a lot of foreign fighters, and basically I wanted to know, why did they come?
Yes.
Why were they participating in a conflict that seemingly they had no role in? They were not Syrian. They were Russian. They were American. They were from Chechnya. They were from all over the world, UK, and other than that. So that was very important for me, and that started a journey where I did quite a few reports for quite a few different channels around the world, and that's what, basically gave me the experience that I have today, and I could talk to you about some of these issues from a first-hand account. And so, yeah.
For someone unfamiliar with the real, level of the conflict, because usually we get our information from the press that's prevalent out there. The fighters that you describe, and they seem to come from a vast number of countries. What is the age group that you saw there?
Well, the age group in general was between, I would say, approximately 21 to 30 was the general age group. However, there was some that were as old as in their 60s. I mean, definitely strong.
Yes.
I remember he was a martial artist, and he was 60 years old. And he'd come from I think he was from Dagestan, if I'm not mistaken. So you had all different shapes and sizes. There was no real way that you could kind of put it into one box that, okay, 21 to 25, because they were older than that, and much older than that. But they were very serious about helping the Syrian people. And initially at that time, there was no ISIS. And then as time passed, the ISIS crisis kicked off, and it's pretty much what you see today. However, I want to make it clear that every foreigner that is there is not necessarily a part of ISIS. And I think that that's been overshadowed, and therefore the efforts that a lot of the foreign fighters have been making has been undone.
So 21 to 30 doesn't appear to be people that have extensive military backgrounds. They look very young. Would you say there were any professional soldiers there? Did you encounter any professional soldiers, or just pure volunteer force?
Oh, it was purely a volunteer force. Everybody who came there, they were not a part of a proper military. They were trying to create a proper military once they got there. And to some extent, they've been successful in doing that. But they were young, but the average conscript is something around 18 years old in different militaries around the world. So seeing young people 20, 21, 22 years old is not really something strange from a military standpoint.
So part of your studies, or part of your let's say your journalistic experience, took you into contacts with various people. I think the most important of your interviews recently was a gentleman by the name of Abu Qatada. What can you tell us about him?
Well, Abu Qatada is a Jordanian cleric or sheikh, or Maulana, I guess you guys would call it.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit new to the South African jargon. Yes. But he's a Jordanian a cleric that was a refugee. He left Jordan, and he was a refugee in the United Kingdom. Now, he was charged and tried and convicted in absentia of terrorism-related charges in Jordan. However, he was convicted in absentia, and he went to the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, he was imprisoned for terrorism-related charges, which never stuck. There was nothing there.
So just to clarify, these charges were preferred in Jordan, which he fled from. He then went to the UK, and the UK decided to charge him on the same charges. Is that right?
No, the UK was investigating him. This was after the whole 2001 terrorist attacks, or attacks that happened in New York. So a lot of people were picked up. He was one of them.
Yes.
And there was a whole legal issue inside of the UK. Can we hold foreigners as suspects indefinitely?
Yes.
So this went back and forth through Parliament for a period of from 2000 to approximately 2004, and he was incarcerated during that time. And it's almost surreal that we're having this conversation.
Yes.
We can imprison foreigners indefinitely without a trial, and he was in prison for a good period of that time while this was being debated in Parliament and through the ministers, the MPs and such like that. After that, it was declared that they could not hold him indefinitely, so he came out of prison. But then the Jordanians said, we want him to come back because he's been charged and tried and convicted in absentia. The British government then arrested him again, and he fought extradition back to Jordan. How was he convicted? He was convicted in a way that was recognized by the European Court for Human Rights and the British authorities, because the evidence which was that he was convicted under was elicited by way of torture.
Right.
So the European Court of Human Rights said that this man cannot be sent back to Jordan, but he spent 10 years in British prisons. And there's an interview here that I think we're going to watch soon, and
Yes.
I think people need to see it.
Look, it seems to militate against the rule of non-refoulement, which is that if a applicant is seeking refugee or asylum seeking asylum permit in a foreign country, then in terms of our constitution especially, the rules of non-refoulement means that you cannot be sent back if you're going to be tortured or harmed or killed in any way. And in fact, it actually supports your application for asylum or refugee status. Now, it also seems to do violence against what we would call the double jeopardy rule. So you can't be tried twice for the same, let's say, crime. I think from what I'm hearing you say, it's the Jordanian authorities say that he was charged with certain crimes. He then left, and while this debate about his freedom or whether he can be sent back to Jordan was raging in England, and he was subsequently released, now he was then extracted to go back to Jordan.
Well, when there were no terrorism charges that could stick, this is between 2000 and 2004, when they basically wanted to hold foreigners
Yes.
Indefinitely
Yes.
without a trial.
Right.
Eventually, he was freed because this was declared, illegal.
Yes, yes.
So he was freed from prison. This is 2004.
Yes.
But then he was rearrested because the Jordanians wanted him to be extradited.
Yes.
Because he had been convicted of terrorism-related charges
In absentia.
in absentia,
Yes.
by way of torture.
Right.
So when the European Court for Human Rights, they made a ruling that were he to return to Jordan, then there would be a high probability that he too would be tortured, and therefore the extradition was blocked.
Right.
And it was subsequently remedied, and I think that we'll let Abu Qatada himself
Yes.
actually tell more of this story and all. But people need to look and see this story, how you look and you'll see a person that would appear to be guilty because you've got politicians speaking about him, the Home Secretary speaking about him, and such like that. So people would look at it and say, all of these big shots
Yes.
who are talking about this man being a terrorist,
Yes.
certainly he must have done something. There's
Yeah.
no way he could have done nothing.
Yeah.
He had to have done something.
Mhm.
But then when it turns out that all these years later, his conviction was brought about by way of a torture
Right.
of certain witnesses. So of course they're going to say anything that you want them to say, and that he has committed no crime. Now, how do you give this man back all of these years that
Yeah.
he lost?
Mhm.
And I think the thing that I really want to say here is, who's radicalizing who?
Right. So what you're saying at the end of the day is an innocent person could be taken through a legal system that could really impact negatively on his life, and at the end of this whole journey you are now set free, or you found not guilty, or you might not even enjoy the full legal process, but it leaves him with a sense of loss because there's no justice here. And what happens to him? That's really the question. He wasn't a radical before.
Well, we have to define,
Mhm.
and this is key.
Yes.
We've got to define what is a radical.
Right.
You see? Because for some people, anybody that says that we should fight, oh, radical stamp.
Right.
You see? Now,
Yes.
is this accurate? I mean, especially I'm saying this here in South Africa.
Yes.
The land of apartheid just 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We have to define radical.
Yes. Well, we're extremely fortunate in that we have a very robust judiciary, and South Africa is doesn't just pay lip service to freedom of speech; it actually gives effect to that. So it's one of the most free countries in the world, actually, where you could actually have a proper trial. But just on that point, I'd like to pause and go for a short break. Please join us after the break for a very, very interesting exclusive interview that our guest Bilal has had with Abu Qatada. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the second half of Legal Ease. As mentioned previously, my very special guest tonight is Brother Bilal Abdul Kareem, who's a journalist. And part of our discussion earlier on was an exclusive interview that Brother Bilal had with a Jordanian scholar, Abu Qatada. And now it gives us great pleasure to air this very exclusive interview for you so that you may be informed directly from Abu Qatada what the issues were surrounding his trial.
Now, you were recently cleared of all charges by the Jordanian authorities in connection to a plot that was supposed to have taken place some years ago. Can you give us a little bit of background in terms of what that was about, what happened, and what's your position now?
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. في الحقيقة هما تهمتان وجهتا إلي في الأردن وتباعدتا في الزمن. كان الزمن بين التهمتين طويل يعني. وأصدقك أنك لو سألتني ما هي التهم بالتحديد فلا أعرفها، لأنني في الحقيقة دخلت المحكمة وخرجت ولم أذكر في المحكمة قط. كانت هي محكمة فتح فيها كل قضايا المتهمين الذين كانوا معي في القضيتين، وأحضروا كل الشهود على كل المتهمين، ولم يكن هناك شاهد واحد يتعلق بي، ولذلك كنت بعيدا عن نعم حاضرا بجسمي، حاضرا في محكمة عقدت من أجلي، ولكن لم يكن هناك أي ذكر لاسمي من أي الشهود أو من أي مسألة طرحت، ولذلك لا أستطيع على التحديد أن أقول ما هي التهم. إنما الذي أعلم كان هناك قضيتان، القضيتان تتعلقان بما يسمى بالإرهاب، ولم يكن لي فيهما ذكر، وانتهى الأمر على أنني خرجت براءة.
Now, much of this evidence that they had or say they had against you was obtained through torture. And I think that this was a part of the problem.
خلال سجني الطويل في بريطانيا من أجل الترحيل كان لابد من مناقشة القضاة للحكومة البريطانية الأمان الذي يتعلق بي بعد السفر، وهم الذين عقدوا الاتفاقية التوقيع بين الأردن وبريطانيا، مذكرة التفاهم، ليس الاتفاقية المذكرة الأولى التي تم على أساسها اعتقالي من قبل الحكومة البريطانية. لم يكن الموقع على المذكرة يحضر في ذهنه أن علي تهم سأواجهها عند العودة إلى الأردن. كان مجرد البحث يدور على فقط أرسله إلى الأردن، ولكن وجهوا بأن عندي علي تهم وقد حكمت عليها. كان جزء كبير من الدفاع عندي ضد الترحيل يتعلق بالأدلة التي قدمت في المحاكم الأردنية على القضيتين، واعترفت الحكومة البريطانية والمحاكم البريطانية المتعلقة بالترحيل، وهي حكومة تتعلق بالهجرة فقط بالأجانب مثلي، اعترفوا أن هذه الأدلة التي أحاكم عليها وحكمت عليها في الأردن وحكمت على وفقها أنها أخذت تحت التعذيب. وكان هذا هو الأساس الذي تم اعتماده من قبل المحكمة الأوروبية بعدم جواز تسليمه. ومن أجل هذه النقطة نشأ اتفاق جديد بين الأردن وبريطانيا يعالج هذه النقطة بالذات. هي اتفاقية الأخيرة لتعالج النقاط التي على أساسها قالت المحكمة الأوروبية بعدم جواز تسليمه.
Why do you think that the British authorities were so keen to put you in prison? Why do you feel that that was their position?
قبل المشاعر، ولماذا وضعوني؟ ما هي الأسباب؟ في الحقيقة الناس لا يعرفون أن طوال المحكمة التي عشتها في بريطانيا لمدة أكثر من 10 سنوات من أجل الترحيل، خلاف المدة التي سجنت فيها تحت قانون الإرهاب الغريب في التاريخ الإنساني، الذي أجاز البرلمانيون البريطانيون وضع أي أجنبي في السجن مدى الحياة دون أن يتلقى محاكمة جنائية، فقط محكمة سرية. لا يجوز للمتهم هذا الأجنبي أن يطلع على الأدلة ولا أن يقابل محاميه السري. أعجوبة كانت. وعلى ضوء هذا بقيت في السجن. فلماذا؟ في الحقيقة لا أعرف. لم يذكر قط في يوم من الأيام ما هي التهم الموجهة ضدي، فحيث لم تذكر لا في المحكمة ولا في الأوراق القانونية، فلماذا أنا أذكر الآن ما لا يعرفوه؟ أقول ربما لكذا ربما لكذا، فربما هم لا يعرفوا هذه القضايا. فالحقيقة لم يذكر أمامي. هذه بريطانيا العجوز الشمطاء، شمطاء كلمة مدح في الحقيقة في أصول العربية، ولكنها العجوز المتهالكة، وضعتني في السجن من أجل ترحيل إلى الأردن. ولم أعلم قط في يوم من الأيام ما هي الأدلة التي تناقش في الأقبية القضائية. أتصور يوجد في القضاء البريطاني أقبية، سراديب سرية يجلس فيها قاضي ويجلس فيها محامي سري لا أعرفه، يتناقشون جميعا مع الحكومة القصد في قضية أبي قتادة، وهو لا يعرف على ماذا يحاكم. فهذا يعطيك الجواب ما هي مشاعري، ما كيف أشعر. كيف أشعر؟ هذه بلد استعماري أو استحماري كما يسميها بعض المفكرين، وبلد مصنوعة على ومبنية على جماجم ودماء الآخرين، وهي بالنسبة لنا المسلمين تستطيع أن تصنع قانونا خلال دقائق. القانون الذي سجنت أنا وإخواني فيه، القانون الأول في 2001، استغرق من البرلمانيين 16 دقيقة فقط، من أجل أن يقول المشرع البريطاني الإله اللورد البريطاني أو المشرع ليقول بأنه يجوز للحكومة أن تسجن أي أجنبي مدى الحياة بأدلة سرية. فلا أظن أن إنسانا في الدنيا يقبل أن يصف هذا الفعل بأوصاف رقيقة، ولا ترك للناس يصفون هذه الحكومة وهذا النظام القضائي وهذا النظام التشريعي، يصفونه بما يشاءون. هو نظام استعماري، نظام فاسد، نظام لا يقيم للإنسان قيمة، فقط هو يقيم لهم، وهو نظام عنصري 100%. البريطانيا هي عنصرية.
There you have it. That was the exclusive interview that Brother Bilal conducted with Abu Qatada. Now, coming from apartheid South Africa, we were subject to many unjust laws for a considerable period, and perhaps for us it is easy to deal with unjust laws. But the one thing that was always available to us was the route to go to court. And there were many very brave lawyers that took our fights on and presented cases of habeas corpus and other cases demanding justice from the then apartheid government and the apartheid system. And they prevailed in many respects. This particular clip makes me wonder which system was more evil. We knew apartheid was the most evil system, a crime against humanity. Brother Abu Qatada accuses the British Parliament or government or system, legal system, as a racist system, laws designed to imprison Muslims.
Well, we have to be realistic, and we have to look at things exactly the way that they are. There is a difference, or what is appearing to be a difference, when it comes to Muslims who are accused, I said the word accused, of terrorism, and non-Muslims. I mean, we're hearing all the time that there are people going from the US, the UK, Canada, and all other places who are going to fight against the Islamic State.
Yes.
However, we also have foreign fighters who fought for other groups who did not fight in the ranks of ISIS, but yet they would be charged with terrorism for fighting against Bashar al-Assad. So the issue is what happens when these people have no access to justice?
I think that leaves you with the resonating sound of injustice and nihilism, helplessness. But on that note, I'd ask you to please stay tuned with us. We're going for a short break, and we'll meet on the other side of the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Legal Ease, the last portion of tonight's show. My very special guest tonight is Bilal Abdul Kareem, and he's a journalist originally from New York. We've just covered the exclusive interview that he had with Jordanian scholar and cleric Abu Qatada, who was imprisoned for a period of 10 years in Britain while the legal system and the parliamentary system decided on whether he should be sent back to Jordan or not. And as you recall, in Jordan he was tried in absentia for terrorism, and to the in terms of the interview, he has absolutely no idea what the charges were. He doesn't know what evidence they had against him. He doesn't know in which court he was going to be represented, who his lawyers were, and all of these things were carried out in secret. Brother Bilal, I mean, that is quite a story that you covered, and that must have triggered in you a curiosity about what this man's condition is, because he said, "How do you think I feel?" I think you asked him at what point, "How do you think I feel?" But he managed to smile and then, still said, "How do you think I feel?" But amongst the other personalities that you might have encountered or done research, recently there's been the matter of Jihadi John. Do we know anything about him?
Well, this Jihadi John has been purported to be a man who was born in Kuwait, who grew up in the United Kingdom, named Mohammed Mwazi.
Brother Bilal, sorry, before you proceed,
Sure.
I see we're running out of time. Please, the lines are open as usual. The number is 011-086-7700, 1, 2, or 3. Please take the opportunity of calling Brother Bilal and asking him any question that you might want answered, because we really only have less than 15 minutes. Brother Bilal, sorry to have interrupted. So we know, what about the man Jihadi John?
Well, this Jihadi John is the one that you see wearing all black with the holster and the gun here, and he's had the prisoners that he has beheaded. Now, these prisoners include Alan Henning, who was a humanitarian worker, James Foley, who was a journalist, and Sotloff, and other than them. This person, Mohammed Mwazi, everyone is now just getting to know and understand who Mohammed Mwazi is. He is a person who the UK authorities solicited him to be a spy for them, basically to spy on the Muslim community in the UK and abroad. He refused. They told him that if you refuse us, you're going to have a lot of problems. And he traveled to Tanzania to go on a safari. They tried to accuse him of going to to meet up with Shabab. He said that Somalia is this way and Tanzania is over here. I have no desire to go over there. And he was harassed on his way back to the UK. He was harassed. He was barred by the MI5 from going to his home country, or the country where he was born in, which is Kuwait. And this man went through 4 years of much turmoil, and he reached out to cage prisoners. There's an office for cage prisoners even here in South Africa. That's a prisoner advocate outreach program. So,
well, Bilal, I'll ask you to just pause. We have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead. Caller, can you hear us? Okay, let's move on. So he reached out to various organizations, including Cage.
No, he reached out to Cage, which is a prisoner advocate organization in the UK. And there have been recordings.
Sorry, caller, we have you online. Caller, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Caller,
How
can you hear us?
Ashraf?
Okay, we seem to be having problems with this line. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No problem.
So Cage was the party that he had turned to in the UK.
Right.
Right.
And basically he explained the harassment that he was under. He tried to file a complaint, which basically went nowhere. And this Muhammad Emwazi is not, now I am not covering for him.
Yes.
I believe that he has committed haram acts, awful, despicable things that no Muslim should commit. However, we have to be realistic. Where did this man come from? What are the things that went into making this man the person that you see today? Am I blaming it all on the security services? No, I'm not doing that, because he's a grown man. He's responsible for his own actions. But if we fail to understand the events that went into making this jihadi John, then we have done ourselves a great injustice.
So what you're really saying is that he, I think you started by saying, was nearly co-opted by MI5, and he refused, and then they said, okay, so we're going to make your life quite difficult.
That's exactly what they said.
Set about a series of events that followed him around. I think it even had personal consequences. He was not able to be married, or
the authorities contacted his first would-be wife and explained that he was a person of interest in terrorism-related cases, and of course the father thought that his daughter marrying a man who is a potential terrorist was a bad idea. Eventually he left the UK because he felt that he couldn't live a normal life there, and he went back to the country he was born in, which is Kuwait. And in Kuwait, he found a job as an IT person, and he also found a new prospective bride. And just before he got married, he wanted to go to visit his family one time, so that, just before he got married. Once he left, he was barred from coming back into the country of Kuwait. The Kuwaitis, after he and his father tried to find out what is the reason for his being denied entry back into the country of Kuwait, the Kuwaitis said, it's not us, but it's coming from the UK authorities. So therefore he lost the opportunity for his second marriage. He lost his job. Eventually he found his way into Syria, and these are some of the things that went into his situation. Now, most people don't want to hear that because it doesn't really fit into the neat box of just being your average everyday terrorist. Do I believe that he is a terrorist? Yes, I do believe that. But also, along with that, we've got to understand that we are, or I should say that jihadi Johns are being created on a level that no one would be able to stop them if this is being allowed to continue. Because when you have people who have no access to justice, this is what you're going to see.
I think we have a caller on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
I think we're having problems with these lines tonight. So, please stay with us. We're going to go for a short break, and then join us after the break for the last segment of the show. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And we understand the lines have been sorted out, and you can try to call us again on 011-086-77-0012 or 3. As mentioned earlier, my very special guest is Brother Bilal Abdul Kareem. Now, Brother Bilal has a website for those that have lost out on the opportunity of being able to call and interact with him, and you're invited. Brother Bilal, what's your website details?
It's bilalabdulkareem.com. That's BILALABDULKAREEM like Mary .com. bilalabdulkareem.com. And I think you'll find lots of other things, things that I've been covering and writing about in this so-called war on terror and the war in Syria and Iraq and other than that.
Do you see an end to all of these? What end do you envisage in, from all of these conflicts and things that you've covered? How do you see the future?
Well, I think in the future there's going to be much good that will come from it. But I think that it's going to take a bit of time for us to actually realize that. I think that a lot of what's being reported in the news media totally overshadows the good that's being done there, because the good doesn't make good TV.
Yes.
It doesn't make exciting TV. So I think that needs to be brought out a bit more. The sacrifices that people are making to save lives in those Syrian territories, even in the Iraqi territories, and other than that. All of that needs to be looked at in the proper context. However, when the narrative is only coming basically from one source, and I've said this many times, that without having good, solid Islamic media, with media corporations that are able to put Muslim reporters on the ground, then we're going to struggle, because the narrative is being brought from one angle, and without a counter narrative, then we're not getting an adequate opportunity to know exactly what's going on in these territories. So I think that's something that really, really has to be addressed.
And I think the other very important point is that the ownership of the media also determines what is reported. For example, in this country, over the last 2 weeks, almost on a daily basis, there was a story of these 3 young girls from England that were apparently traveling to join ISIS in Syria, and had managed somehow miraculously to leave England, travel through Turkey, and end up crossing the border in Syria. How did that happen? How is it possible that 3 young minors were not stopped by anyone along the way? How is it possible?
Well, the first issue we have to look at is this, in my opinion.
Yes.
We've been hearing that they've gone to join ISIS.
Yes.
Well, who says that they went to go join ISIS? Because there are many groups. It is now that the news media, whenever they find out that someone left a European country or America and they've gone to the Syrian territories, immediately that means they went to go and join ISIS. So me, myself, I would like to know, what is the proof that they went to go and join ISIS? This is the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is that these young girls have traveled. Now, people would ask, how could this happen? The reality is that at their age, those ages, they do travel. And some of the onus has to be on the parents. What was going on inside of the house, that these young girls would feel that they would just pick up and then they would leave. I think that's a part of the picture as well. I'm not really one to blame everything on the authorities, that the authorities now have to track down and know why every person is traveling and such like that. I don't think that's a world that we even want to live in.
Yeah.
However, I think I will say that we only have a very topical understanding of what's going on with these 3 girls, that allegedly they went to ISIS. We don't know that. And I think that we just have to wait and see what's going to happen next. One interesting point I do want to bring out quickly is that the parents have been asking for the girls to please come home. We miss you and we love you. And I can understand that as a parent myself. I can understand how a mother would say these things. However, another thing has to be borne in mind. If those girls were to say, "Mom, you're right, I made a mistake, I'm coming right back home," these girls would be imprisoned under the terrorism law. Whether they went to ISIS or they went to another group or something along those lines, or whatever it was, they would be imprisoned under a terrorism law. How many years would they be looking at? So we have to look, the system is broken right now. It's not one that is conducive for these young girls to say, "Hey, I made a mistake, I should not have gone, I'm on my way back home."
Yeah.
They're on their way back home to where? A prison cell.
And on that note, it's time to say goodbye, and just time to thank you, Bilal, very much for coming in.
Thanks.
And to our viewers, we apologize for the technical problems tonight, but please visit the website and you'll have more information. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.